Hey everybody, Jake here, TrendSpider, to go over the weekend update into the middle of July. Hopefully everybody had a good 4th of July weekend for those that celebrate it. It was a short week this week and a really solid week for most of the market. We'll start with SPY and then jump into some other broad market names and then into some individual names. To start with, we have SPY. You can see here that we had a really strong move up here through this volume gap. And remember, a volume gap is essentially something that occurs when you use the anchored volume by price. You can see here I have the March highs highlighted right here. So I'm measuring the volume profile essentially of this move to the downside. And you can see here that this area highlighted in orange, there just wasn't a lot of volume that took place here. And so the price was able to move up and down very quickly. So you can see it move down very quickly into late June through this area, and then right back up very quickly through this same area, right up to this next break-even supply zone highlighted in red. And you can see on Friday today, we did have some trouble getting above that area. So the main area that you're going to want to get above here on SPY at least is really getting above this node here, right around 394. So if we do that, then you can see we also have another area above that doesn't have a lot of volume. And then the price, at that point would be looking to move up pretty quickly through that area to this next zone, which is anywhere from around 410 all the way up to around 415. And I'll highlight that here in red. So, if we can get above this supply zone, we do have some more upside shown here. And then you can see on the weekly chart, we do have this falling wedge. You can see that we had a strong weekly candle, but we are still within this falling wedge. And, from the bearish perspective, if you want to look at the bear thesis, this is definitely still kind of a rough looking bear flag. So, it's not perfect, but it does have that general kind of that pull here. The pull is simply just your big move to the downside. Then you have this consolidation kind of this flag. So, we're not out of the woods yet. We do still have some work to do, but all in all, a pretty solid week for the S&P 500 as well as the Qs. You can see here that on the Qs, we did break out already of this falling wedge. And you'll notice here in a lot of these charts that we go over today, these falling wedges have started to break to the upside and other patterns as well. So with the Qs, the main thing that I would be watching for here is now that we've broken out of this falling wedge, potentially a retest of this previous resistance zone that would act as potential support. But then to the upside, you do have this swing high VWAP zone from the 29th. And you can see here that I did add a little bit of margin of error here just to capture some of this price action back in April. That didn't get all the way up to the anchored VWAP, but it did get within about 1% of the VWAP, and that's why I chose that 1% offset for this particular zone. So the upside potential target would be around 308 to 314 if we do continue up going into the rest of the month. And you can see here on the weekly chart, we already have this falling wedge on the daily, but you can see it a little better on the weekly here, breaking out, and we do have some nice upside here. And same thing, if we just add the VWAP here, it's the same area, just the top of this falling wedge is where you want to anchor the VWAP. And as I mentioned, that zone above is anywhere from around 308 up to around 314. Now, going into IWM, IWM did have a breakout this week. You can see that it did have more of a symmetrical triangle breakout, kind of a shorter term symmetrical triangle breakout here. The main thing to note here is the fact that we do still have this gap above from early June. And that gap fills right around 183 to 184. So your upside would definitely be that gap fill above. And then you can see a little higher up is the COVID low VWAP and this previous area of support that acted as resistance back in June, early June. So if we do get through this gap above, you have this area from around 188 all the way up to around 192 to get through to really change things from just a simple dead cat bounce at this point. And same thing here, bears could easily call this a bear flag, a pretty solid looking bear flag, to be honest. So if we can break above and close above this gap, I think that would definitely change the chart dynamics a little bit, maybe look a little better than what we have now. But it is still a little early to tell, but all in all, a pretty solid weekly candle across the board. Now, XBI is a really interesting one. This is one that you can really use similar to Bitcoin, almost as a risk on, risk off proxy in the market. This was one of the few charts that had a decent looking monthly candle close for June. And you can see here that, we've had a really strong move from all the way down to around 62 in mid-June, all the way up to around 84 now. So we did break out of this downward sloping trend zone, and your next target above would definitely be this November 21 high right around 88. And you can see here, if we look at the weekly chart, we do have a lot of work to still do here, because at this point, we are kind of just retesting this previous support zone, which would now act as a potential resistance zone above. So really, until we get above around 90, we're still in possibly an SR flip here, which is essentially just when a previous support zone turns to resistance. And so we haven't seen that yet, because we did have a really strong candle this week. But in the next couple weeks, it will definitely be kind of make or break for XBI getting above this area. Now, going into Bitcoin, another risk-on kind of proxy for the broad markets, we are going to use Kraken just because it doesn't have this huge wick that Coinbase does back in 2016, 2017. And you can see here just really a few different things. One, we did have a bearish pennant here. And the reason why it's called a bearish pennant is simply just the setup. You have a huge move to the downside. That's your pull. And then the pennant here is simply just your symmetrical triangle here. So technically, if you're looking at a textbook, this would be a bearish pennant. But bearish pennants do not always have to be bearish. It's what price action does and which way price breaks out of the pennant. And so in this case, we broke to the upside. We hit these previous highs, saw back in late June, right around 21.8 to 22.2K. And we are kind of trading right at that 21.8 area right now going into the weekend. We still have a couple days left in the weekend for crypto. So we'll see if we can get above this area. And if we do, then your next level to watch would be anywhere from 23 to 23.6K. Now on the weekly chart, you can see here that this diagonal sloping support zone still is holding really nicely. And so if we do continue to get a bounce here, I'm thinking, we could at least test this wick here around 25,300 or so if we can break above that 23 to 23.6K on the daily chart. So all in all, a pretty solid candle here. If we zoom in, you can see that we do have not necessarily an outside bar here, but we are almost engulfing last week's candle here. It's really right on the line, but all in all, pretty solid candle and a pretty solid setup here with the weekly chart and that longer term support that goes all the way back to 2015. Now going into some individual names, we'll start with Apple. And Apple's another one, Apple and a lot of these bigger names look very similar to the Qs. So very similar to what we talked about in the Qs. We have the falling wedge breakout here on Thursday, continuation up on Friday. And your swing high VWAP here from the March highs is anywhere from around 150 all the way up to around 153. And then you can just see that a little better here on the weekly chart with that breakout. And this VWAP zone is really right in line with this previous support area, which would now act as a resistance above. You can see that it did act as resistance in late May. And so this area, 150 to around 153, is both a VWAP area as well as just a basic horizontal level above. So you do have some confluence there. Different market participants all looking at that 150 area, which is also just a psychological level as well. Now going into Microsoft. You did have a nice breakout here on Wednesday, and you had a continuation up on Friday, but you actually did have a red close today on Friday, but still above this resistance zone. And these March highs, this VWAP zone here above is right around 270, 273. So that would be your main target above to watch next week. And then on the weekly chart, you can see here that we broke out of this falling wedge. We retested the resistance zone, and now we're closing almost near the high of the week. So all in all, pretty solid setup here going into the middle of July. Now, next one is Tesla. You can see Tesla has a little more of a descending triangle look here. So this is a great example of an SR flip, something we talked about on XBI, where you had this previous resistance zone, you broke out, you pulled back, you retested, and then you continued to move up. So this VWAP zone was already hit. So the 745 to 775 area was really where price was able to close out on Friday. So right where you'd expect to have a little bit of a stall there, possibly for the market to digest some supply here. But all in all, if we can get above 775, this previous support zone, which would now act as resistance above on the weekly chart, you can see here goes all the way up to around 790. So we really need to break about 790 to really change this chart up from what we're seeing now. And, some people may want to call this a bear flag. Technically, I guess, it does have a little bit of that look. But all in all, we really want to see a close above this horizontal level here around 790. And then things would definitely start to look up a little bit, at least in the short to middle term, medium term of things. Next one is Amazon. Amazon, also more of a descending triangle here compared to the falling wedge that we saw in some of the other charts. Same thing, we broke out to the upside. This is a great example of the fact that a lot of people think descending triangles are bearish. Any pattern that you see, it may have a little bit of a bias one way or the other, but there's no pattern that has a 100% guarantee. Oh, bull flag, you got to go up. No, it's the bull flag or the bear flag is just the setup, and then the price action will determine what the actual sentiment and the actual move of that setup is. In this case, we have the descending triangle breaking to the upside rather than the downside, which is what a lot of people do associate descending triangles with, is more downside. But all in all, we got the breakout. If we continue up next week, maybe retesting the previous resistance zone below, which would act as potential support. That swing high VWAP zone is right around 122 to 125 above, shown by this orange area. And then on the weekly chart, same thing. Previous resistance has become support over the last couple months at this point, and it really kind of an inside candle here for the week of July 4th. And you can see here that we do have an inside bar from last week. That was just a huge range for Amazon. And so this week you do kind of have a little bit of an inside price action bar here. So if we can break these previous highs around 117, then that 122 target is definitely an area to watch. And then just using basic horizontal support resistance levels above, you're going to have some trouble around 126 to 129. And then, we'll play it by how the price action looks from there. Going into XOM, some oil names, definitely a big move down for a lot of these oil names over the last couple weeks, but you did have a little bit of a bounce. Still not a great looking weekly candle. I mean, not a horrible looking candle. You do have a wick here that shows, buyers stepped back in and pushed price up after bouncing at this support zone here going back since 2020. But all in all, you still have a close below last week's close. Definitely a little bit of constructive price action needs to happen to the upside for this to look a little better than it does now. But all in all, you are holding the December 21 low here, this zone highlighted in blue that has acted as a bounce zone in the past. And so far, going into the end of the week, we did have a bounce on Wednesday, and then we did have a little bit of a bounce into Thursday and Friday. So all in all, you do have a gap above. That would be something a lot of people want to kind of look at for possibly a target to the upside, but you'd really need to get above these previous highs first for XOM, right around 92.25 all the way up to around 93.25. If that breaks, then you would definitely put the gap above in your sights. And that is right around anywhere from around 98.75 all the way up to around 99.75. So all in all, decent week for a lot of the names out there, the broad markets, crypto. So, is this a potential bigger reversal on the horizon going into the rest of July? We'll have to see, but the charts are definitely showing a little bit of strength going into next week. Everybody have a great weekend. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos and these updates, and we'll see you next time.